Hello, how are you? So excited to be with you. Donnell, and I mentor in soul embodied leadership. And I'm so excited to come today and talk to you and start this. I have had this plan, this idea to do a weekly show and just come on and share with you what's present in my heart. And so I'm calling it the Embodied Oracle, because if you know, whether you know me or not, I've been an oracle for years. I can see all sorts of different things. And, one of the biggest journeys I've had is really taking these gifts and having them be fully present within my body, like really, using my channeling abilities and grounding it into reality, and I think that a lot of spirituality right now is, there's a lot of stuff that's happening and a lot of information. And I want to make things really practical and simple for you. And today's topic is going to be all about, I called it tender resiliency, which is like, what is that? But really, it's about being tender-hearted, but also resilient at the same time in your being. So that is the topic that I'm going to go into today. I'm going to share with you a few ways to kind of navigate some things and really cultivate that tender-hearted resiliency. And I want to start with, I'm always going to come to you with what is happening for me real time. And I say that because to me, being present is one of the most important things. And right now, there's just so much going on in the collective. It would be so easy for you to feel overwhelmed with what's happening. And I kind of want to start there because I've been noticing with my clients, I've been noticing even with myself, where we can live in reaction. So I just want you to take a moment before I start diving into this, and I want you to think about where in your life right now might you be in reaction. So whether, like, let's just say somebody at work said something to you that you don't like. Are you able, or you could be a relationship, whatever, a friendship. But I want you to think about how you behave when you feel triggered by specific situations in your life. Do you just lunge into a reaction? Do you kind of go into fight or flight? And then kind of later come back to it and be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I reacted that way. Or are you able to sit in the seat of the observer? And it takes practice. So the seat of the observer is when you're able to see what's happening in your reality and not always just like get lost in it. Like really be able to maintain your center, which is what we're going to be talking about today, which is resiliency. Because you're going to notice during these times. So let's just be real. Like, shit's getting crazy on the planet right now. Like, every time I look, I'm like, wait, what's going on? What's happening? And I don't even watch the news. But there's just so much happening. So it's going to really behoove each and every single one of us to have this ability to be resilient and not be so reactive right now in our lives. And so what that kind of, where that started is, going back to this example, is if you're in this space and like, somebody does something and you're in your fight or flight or fawn or freeze, whatever your survival mechanism is, then you lose your center. And so a part of what's happening right now, one of the things that I've been channeling and really feeling and seeing is that there's a massive trauma response right now on this planet. People are in a massive trauma response. And we each individually get to work on how we show up right now. Because we are either going to, so if there's a quantum soup of collective consciousness in the quantum field, we get to decide what is our contribution to that. So if your contribution is, going into survival and fear and all of that, then okay, you're contributing that energy. But maybe the contribution that you're really wanting to make and get to is, how can I manage my expectations of what's happening in my life and not be so reactive and continue to see things and find a positive in, because that's what I'm really seeing too, is people are starting to like kind of get, like losing hope in some ways for what's possible, because they're starting to feel out of control with everything that's happening, which is understandable. So there's your ability to like how you manage yourself, and then there's the collective, right? And the collective, like I said, there's a lot going on. So just, everybody, I'm not even gonna say if you had trauma, everybody has had trauma in their past, in their early childhood, which creates their ability to adapt, to what's happening. It's like an adaptation to whatever happened back then. And then that's like your lens and your foundation for how you see the world. So I want to give an example because I think it'll be really helpful. So if you're living, and by the way, this is not mine. Somebody else shared this one time and I just love this analogy. So I'm using, I don't remember who exactly it was. But if you lived in Alaska and you were used to dressing there because of the climate and because of the weather. So let's say you had a trauma situation, and the metaphor is like you adapted by like, it's cold, it's this, it's that, I got to dress this certain way. But then life changes and you want to elevate and you move to Hawaii, and you're still trying to dress like you did in Alaska. You're still trying to use the same tools, the same reactivity, the same way of showing up in your life to manage where you're going. It's not going to work after a certain point. So as we're growing and evolving, we are always going to have to be kind of redefining the lens we see our lives through, right? And that's what this conversation is about today, is redefining the lens that you're going to see your life through so you can thrive during challenging times. So you can thrive, because we're not meant to be in survival mode all the time. So if your trauma response from your childhood has kept you in survival mode, and the way that you'll know that is because you're in reactivity a lot. You're not able to fully ground in. You're not really able to hold yourself through the challenging and difficult times. Or there's that's like really in survival. Or maybe you find that you're trying to elevate and shift your life up, and there's an inability to get to that next level because, truth be told, your physical body doesn't have the capacity to hold all that energy, to hold the new. So you might find yourself sabotaging or kind of like hitting your limit and just being like, I can't do this, or getting sick. Think about those times where you're like kind of moving forward in life, and you like get the promotion or you get the relationship, and then all of a sudden you get sick, or you can't, something happens because you're not used to holding that energy. So the first thing is I want you to notice, like I'm talking about the reactivity. So have you been in reaction? So I recently, this week, I was thinking about it. I was like, God, I did this really incredible meditation, and I realized that up until, a few years ago, certain areas of my life were all based on very unconscious behaviors, especially it was around money. I was thinking about money and how I make money. And in the past, I was making money because I had this, I had all these things that were happening, and I was coming at it from fear and scarcity. And I wanted to shift that. I didn't want to be in a space of like, oh, I got to continue to make money from that place. I want to make it from pleasure and joy and magnetism and all these other things. And so I realized, I was like, God, I've been in reaction a lot. So what would it look like to shift and change that? So there's an area or multiple areas of your life where you may be living in reaction to things. And that's fine. It's part of our journey. We're all learning and growing. But what gets really tricky, and I want to call it sticky energetically, is when that's happening and then you add in the collective chaos of what's happening, and how that can color our ability to feel grounded and stable in our reality. So if there's individual trauma and then you add on collective trauma, it just kind of expands it. So this conversation today is not about, oh my gosh, how much trauma. It's more, how can we manage and mitigate everything so that we can really thrive. So when I had a conversation this week, and one of my clients happened to be she lives in Chicago, and there was a shooting there, and it was right in her neighborhood, and we had a conversation about it, and she was really upset. And I've had multiple conversations with people over the last couple years where something is happening in the collective that triggers a response that makes, the individual feel grief, sadness, and like, what do I do with this? Like, how can I feel safe in a world that feels really unsafe? And, when I was talking to her about it, I kind of was saying to her, I said, I really feel like we have our individual dark nights of the soul, and then we have our collective, the planet's dark night of the soul that we're going through, where everything feels really challenging and it feels difficult. And in these times, it's when you can stay tender with yourself, like letting yourself go through whatever process you need to, whether it's anger, sadness, grief, whatever it may be. That tenderness, it's like almost like a mother who lets their kid like go through whatever emotional stuff that they need to go through so they can come back to their set point, right? We need to mother ourselves right now. And then find the resiliency and the strength that, okay, this may be happening, yes, but how can I determine and still stay in my energy and figure out where I'm going, where I'm tracking, so that I don't get lost in this and I can remember. This is a key thing, is that you chose to incarnate during this time. And although it's crazy and there's a lot of different things happening, there's also a massive awakening, massive beautiful things that are happening. And sometimes before the light comes the dark, and it's like almost like you're in the cave of uncertainty, the darkness, you're not knowing what's happening, and you feel so much, right? And it's in these times that something new wants to be birthed. Something wants to be expanded. Something, it's like the contraction comes before the expansion. And so during, when there's just crazy stuff happening on the planet, how can you trust that not that everything is, it's not like, because one of the questions she said to me is like, why do these horrific events happen? And I said, I don't know exactly why horrific events happen, except I know this is a planet of duality. I know that there's polarity. I know that there's light and there's dark. And I know that everybody has a choice. And there's a massive call for people to heal and work on their own individual trauma, so that hurt people don't hurt people. And there's just so many things that need to be changed, right? But the whole point of this conversation is that each and every single one of us has the opportunity to manage our own reactivity, to cultivate our own resiliency, our own strength. So our contribution to the quantum field, to what the future is being, the future that's being created, is that we can still find hope even in the contraction. We can still have something where we're like, okay, what is this? What is this terrible thing happening? What is it going to shift and bring to people's awareness? Maybe how is it going to wake people up to something that they didn't see before, but now they see so clearly? A lot of these situations like really activate people. It activates and it wakes people up. So I think when these things happen, it really shows us like we are going to mourn and grieve where innocence is lost on the planet, right? But coming back to you individually and your journey and where you're heading, in order to be proactive, in order to create the life that you want, you're going to have to manage your ability to be the observer and how you relate to everything in your environment. And what that means is a lot of us are so much of how we feel about ourselves is dictated by something externally. The person, the money, the situation, just so much. It's almost like a level, it's like a subtle codependency. So I was saying recently that I feel like this is an opportunity for you to think about the areas where you're still sourcing out your strength and still looking outside of yourself for validation. And seeing those as energy leaks. And not beating yourself up. This is where the tenderness comes in. When we are seeing ourselves for, and how we're operating in our reality, it doesn't mean that you have to be tough on yourself or, how could I do that? I mean, I recently, just a couple years ago, let go one of the biggest codependency patterns that I had that was in my blind spot. I know codependency very well. And we all have these little areas where we're codependent. And we need connection and we need other people. And we also need to be able to resource within ourselves our ability to know our own truth, have our own inner authority. That's what these times are asking of us. And if you're still sourcing out your power to something outside of you, that is a subtle form of codependency. So part of what I want to, really share today is looking at where you're reactive, where you're leaking your power, and what would it look like to bring it back to yourself. And it's not to say, oh, you're going to just live in a bubble. That's not realistic. That's not realistic. Like when that happened for my client who lived in Chicago and the shootings were right down, it was on July 4th and the shootings were right down the street from her. She couldn't, there's no bubble to protect against that. That was in her community, it was in her neighborhood. And a lot of the times, some of the things that are happening are, with the way the internet, news and everything, we're learning about it. We hear about everything. And you can't react to every single thing that's happening. Your nervous system can't handle that. Our nervous systems weren't built for that. But what you can do is decide what you're going to subscribe to, like what you're going to put your attention to, and how you're going to react or be with the energy. So like I said to her, sometimes we're grieving, sometimes we're sad, sometimes we're angry when we find out things that are happening in the collective. But let it all be an opportunity to inform you of where you're tracking in your life and to remind you that you are a co-creator of your reality with source energy, with divine. And that there's going to be massive fluctuations. And as we're going through this awakening, there's the dark night of the soul. Like, remember, after the dark night of the soul comes the expansion, comes the growth, comes the realizations. So wherever you are with what's happening, I want you, like this, the invitation is to come into yourself, into your being, and to find how you can really regulate yourself. Not with what's happening outside of you, but what's happening inside. And I often say, I started this conversation by talking about trauma. A lot of people co-regulate with the energy of the past. They go back to their set point, their fight, flight, freeze, all the patterns that they have. But if you're going to adapt to these times, you're going to probably have to come up with new ways to cultivate deeper resiliency, deeper strength, deeper certainty and trust within your being so that you can continue to co-create and be that contribution. So that means that instead of co-regulating with the past, you want to co-regulate with the future. Now, that doesn't mean that you're always future tripping. What I mean by that is there's a version of you in the future that is as resilient as you need to be, tender-hearted, which means you can still have an open heart as you're navigate. Like, that's the goal, right? Have an open heart, because when you have an open heart with boundaries, you create an incredible life. Doesn't mean you get walked all over. It just means that you have tenderness still within you. You trust the tenderness of your heart to be guiding and leading you. But you have this future version of yourself that's already obtained or done the thing that is your next thing that you want to do. That's already living your more limitless life. And so feel into her. And when there's a lot of uncertainty and you don't know where the world is going, I think the most important thing to know is, where are you going? What do you want? What are you cultivating for your life? And that's where you kind of think about, what do I want to feel? You know, what's my future self doing? And it's not to say that, I always teach in my futuring, that if you have a dream that you want to do, take that dream and write out the dream, but figure out, what does that dream make you feel inside? And that is your set point. So maybe it makes you feel peaceful. So peace is what you want to embody in the now moment. You want to relax into peace, even if the situations outside of you don't always feel that way. And I'm not talking about bypassing the feelings that you may be feeling for what's happening, but instead of being so reactive in your reality, being proactive and deciding how you want to feel. What do you want to create? I think that is going to be where you could be the biggest contribution. And also you can stay on purpose and mission for what you're doing in your reality. That's really, so I want to leave you with just a few tips so that you can stay out of getting sucked into everything. And when things do go up and down, you have that center point. So the first thing I want to share with you, to really have authority over yourself right now, is I want you to think about your body, because your body is the one that has the nervous system trauma responses, right? And if you're going to rewire and shift all that up, you're going to have to take really good care of your body. So I want you to think about right now what you could subtract from your environment, and maybe what you need to add in. So subtract might be get rid of some social media, the news, add into your reality some things for your body, some more movement, some more rest, some things that really allow you to feel better, to feel really good. The second thing is to start to, build trust. So if you've been outsourcing your authority to the government, to the doctor, to the whatever, the sad thing is, it's kind of realizing that sometimes they don't have your best interest at heart. And it's not to say that you're not going to have your people that you trust, but like a lot of the work that I do is empowering you to trust you. So building your trust muscle with yourself, receiving your intuitive information, and then acting on it. Faith in action, like move forward on what you know to be true for yourself. And the only way you can do that is if you cultivate a really beautiful, deep relationship with yourself, which is all the work that I love to work with my clients on. I think it's so important. How you lead and how deep you're willing to go with yourself really translates to how deeply you're going to be able to connect with others and lead others. If you're willing to not see certain parts of yourself, if you don't trust yourself, how do you expect other people to trust you? That's the truth. So that's the second thing. And then the last thing that I really think would be helpful during this time is, what are you excited about? What is one future vision? Because the way to change and shift reality is to imagine a better future. And so just take one area of your life right now. You don't have to do all the areas, but take one area of your life right now that you want to have more abundance. And whether it's your relationship, your work, your purpose, your gifts, whatever it may be, with your children, and envision, dream about what that would look like. Like write it out, and then write out your dream in that one particular area of your life. And then I want you to think about, really like get quiet with yourself, and how does it make you feel? And from there, once you figure out how it makes you feel, I want you to work on embodying that, because during these times where things are up and down and challenging, you could get lost in the fear and the uncertainty of what's happening in the collective. And I'm here to tell you that yes, you could get fearful sometimes, but you are going to cultivate an inner garden of prosperity and joy and all the things that you need so you can navigate these times from a place of resiliency and strength and certainty of being. And that means cultivating also a relationship with the divine, whatever you, God, source. You're not doing this life alone. You have your people around you, but you have God. And so it's like envisioning, getting excited for what's possible versus sitting there watching the news and going, oh my God, what's happening? Are we going to have a recession? Are we going to have this? What else is like sovereignty is knowing how to manage yourself. It goes back to what I started with, the reactivity. It's about stepping into conscious choice, intentionality in your life. So if you feel like you want to talk deeper about this, you can always schedule a discovery call with me. You can always hop on Zoom with me and we could talk about what it would be like to really deepen into this. Maybe you're at a point in your life where you want to be able to lead yourself and feel really strong in the way that you're showing up in your life. And you want to improve certain aspects of your life, release the old trauma patterns, release the way that you're seeing your reality, and really step into a higher vision. Message me. Let's talk about it. Also, I want to share with you, so you can either go on my website, which is donnelldavis.com, or you can private message me and we can set up a time to talk on Zoom. The second thing that I want to share is if you are, I'm all about experiences. I really feel like when I do experiences with, clients, I create these portals, and I have two different opportunities. One is in San Diego. It's actually called Valley Center. It's August 25th through the 28th. It's the Soul Remembrance Retreat. It's going to be incredible. It's really about identifying your biggest block, clearing it, and stepping into your next elevated version of you. So we have that, and there's going to be some sacred medicine, a shaman. I'm hosting these two retreats, by the way, with Whitney Yarnell. And then the second retreat is in Maui at Lumeria in November. I think it's November 5th through 8th. And details for both of these retreats are, you can message me, or I'll be posting in the comments, or you can go into the link in my profile and find them. But that one's all about superabundance. It's about activating all the next levels for yourself. And what the women received from the last retreat, I did this retreat last year with Whitney, and it was unbelievable and incredible to see when intentionality and letting go of reaction and just really getting focused on how you're, kind of dancing with life, what they get, relationships, engagements, a baby, a new home, a new business model. I mean, all sorts of stuff came from this. So message me to learn more. I will be with you guys next week. New topic, new stuff. If you have any thoughts or responses, I'd love to hear them. If there's anything that you want to learn more about, don't hesitate to reach out to me, because I'm always going to be looking for show topics. And eventually I'll be opening it up to more Q&A. But I hope you guys have a beautiful rest of your week. Take care.